and I am interviewing Sarah Yarrin. I am Prager for the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. And Sarah has kindly agreed to talk to us about whatever she remembers about the years she's lived in Dallas. How long have you lived in Dallas, Sarah?
I moved to Dallas in 1946.
Ah, that qualifies you for one of these interviews, I think. Gosh, yeah. So, let's see. Well, tell me, what brought you to Dallas?
Very easily. I'm happy that I remember very well.
Yeah.
But before I begin, I wanted to say thank you very much, and thank you to the Historical Society for calling and choosing me. I was very, very glad that you called.
I will tell you, you were on a long list, and I chose you.
Thank you, thank you.
I want to know what
All righty, I will tell you what brought me to Dallas. A wonderful young man that I married was living in Dallas. I was born and raised in Tyler, Texas.
Oh, my goodness.
And he used to say he got the last of the Tyler roses. That's what he said to my face.
Yes.
Anyway, and so we were married in the temple in Tyler and moved to Dallas.
Right away?
Right away.
Uh-huh.
November of 46.
Wow.
And I've lived here all my life since then.
Now, do you still have any family in Tyler?
Cousins.
Cousins.
But I come from a large family. But a year after I left Tyler, my parents moved to San Antonio. So they've been there now. Of course, I've lost both my parents, but my sisters and so forth, the family's been there in San Antonio now for 40
So just as
some
long.
odd years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've sort of considered that home, but never forgot Tyler.
Yes. Well, I would love to hear, before we start talking about Dallas, just what it was like growing up in a small town like Tyler as a Jewish girl in Texas, you know, in the 30s and 40s. What was that like?
First of all, I loved Tyler. It was a small town, but I didn't think of it as being a small town. I was brought up in the conservative synagogue. My parents did not let me date non-Jewish boys. So in high school, I was not allowed to date kids in my class. There was one other Jewish girl in my class, and there were no boys. But we belonged to the Young Judea, and we would get together, and it was so much fun to come into Dallas, and there was conventions, and we would go out with boys a year, 2 or 3 older, and I never felt deprived. The only thing I can remember is not having a date to my senior prom because there were no Jewish boys in the class. And my parents said, that's just the way it is. And when I graduated from high school, I was 16. So, but we had a wonderful time. I don't remember BBYO being active back in the 40s. 30. Actually, it would be in the 30s.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I don't recall BBYO being active.
But Young Judea was.
Young Judea was wonderful. We had so much fun.
Well, that comes out of the conservative movement, if I remember right? It's their Zionist, youth group. Well, so let me ask you this, actually, if you don't mind. As being part of Young Judea, was Zionism part of that? Was it an overt, explicit message for you as a child?
Oh, yes. I was always brought up with a very strong religious background. Not that my parents kept kosher or anything like that, but I was confirmed. Girls were not put in school in those days, and certainly not in the synagogue. We were without a rabbi when it was time for me to get married. And we were married in the temple in Tyler. Rabbi Wessel married us in Tyler, Texas.
So he was from Tyler?
Yes.
But not associated with your synagogue?
No. We were without a rabbi at that time.
And that was unusual. In other words, were there usually rabbis for a synagogue in a town like that?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was a small town, but they still had conservative synagogue and the Reformed temple.
Oh, okay.
You have to realize Tyler at that time was the heart of East Texas. And we, Kilgore, Gladewater, Longview, all the little towns around us came to Tyler and prayed with us, took part in all the festivals. It was just a wonderful life.
So even if the Jewish kids didn't live in Tyler, you met them from all around the area?
Yes, yes. And we had such a good time.
Well,
and it was, I never felt deprived.
You never felt like there weren't enough boys to date or not enough activities?
Because, first of all, you met kids at the conventions, but you kept it going.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of young Jewish kids in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
And that was only 90, 100 miles away.
I see. I mean, I'm sure there are some people studying Dallas Jewish history who will want to know this. Is there anybody that you remember from those days, from when you were a high school student, coming to Dallas, other high school students from Dallas?
You know something?
Anybody stick in your mind?
Yes. There was a young woman, Siegel. I don't remember her first name, whether it was Frida Siegel. And there was a Benson boy who I understand went to Hollywood and...
Not Robbie.
Robbie.
Oh, no.
He was, wait a minute, it's a Benson. I don't remember.
Robbie's too young for that, I think.
But someone, a Benson young man, and he married the Siegel girl. And they went to Hollywood, and the name has come up since that they were some of the kids who made it in Hollywood.
Interesting. So there wasn't like any good friend in Dallas or a boyfriend or anything that really sticks in your mind?
No, not at that time.
Yeah,
no.
okay.
I had sister living here.
Oh.
Shortly after that, now, growing up, no.
Did you have a big sister?
I have a sister 2 years older.
And what's her name?
Fanny, and my maiden name was Phillips.
Okay. Nice Jewish name.
And, well, it used to be Philippowski.
Okay.
It's been shortened to Phillips.
Yes, okay,
anyway,
that's
but my oldest sister is Fanny Phillips Leon. And she married Louis Leon, who grew up in South Dallas.
Okay.
So, and they live in Houston now. As a matter of fact, I mailed them the tape that was made from the meeting, and I mailed it to them because I knew Louis would love to see some of the old-timers and what's happened and so forth, and to reminisce with the tape.
I see. Well, so, okay, let's see. And just out of curiosity, where were when you did come to Dallas during those years, where would you guys go to play?
We home hospitality. Everything was home hospitality.
Okay, so you would stay with a family.
We stayed with families.
And where were the conventions held? That probably didn't make a huge impact.
It did not. It didn't stay with me.
Okay.
It was just I remember it was fun, and when my own children went through BBG, I have 3 daughters, went through BBG, I thought to myself, isn't it great? I had Young Judea. They had BBYO,
right.
I'm wondering what it'll be for the next generation.
Right.
And I think it's wonderful.
Indeed.
See, and even though I had a conservative background, Marvin and his family belonged to Temple Emmanuel in South Dallas. So when I got married and moved here, it was a foregone conclusion I would go to Temple Emmanuel, which I did.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to know about your first impressions on that. I thought what I would do, though, is try to just fill in. I'm trying to, do a chronological see.
Don't
Let me forget to ask you those questions, because I want to get back.
Okay.
Let's see. You got to Dallas in 1946.
Right.
Do you know how your family got to Tyler? In other words, where did they immigrate from or come from? Or
Yes. Both came from Poland. My father landed in Galveston.
Oh.
And Rabbi Cohn got him a room
in Galveston.
And he sold newspapers.
Mm-hmm. Your dad. Do you have any idea what year it was when he landed? Or when he got here?
No, I do not. I can trace back.
Mm-hmm.
But right after he was bar mitzvah,
yeah,
they were having a lot of trouble in Poland.
Mm.
And my grandmother sent him to the United States. So he was in short pants and sent him, put him on a boat.
By himself. Wow. Did he have siblings who stayed in Poland?
No.
Oh, okay. He was
the
only...
three boys. There are two brothers.
Okay.
One went to Mexico City. One went to New York. And Daddy stayed in Texas.
I'll be. And would you mind saying their names?
No, not at all. Hyman Phillips was my father. Jack Phillips was my uncle in New York. And Abraham Phillips, they called him A.Z. He claimed he knew everything from A to Z.
I see.
Phillips was in Mexico City.
Okay. You don't still have family in Mexico, or do you?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
It's cousins.
Cousins?
And on the cruise we were on just recently, whenever I see someone or meet someone from Mexico City, I always inquire about the family.
Yeah.
There.
Are they still in Mexico City then?
A lot of them have died.
Oh.
They were a very prominent family. The uncle came at a very opportune time, and he and President of Mexico bought land together.
I see.
And he was, he was a very fortunate man. So they have a Jewish community center there that was built from poker game winnings on Sunday night.
Speaking of fortunate.
And they made up the difference.
Really?
The family. So it's a good story.
What about your mom? Where did she come from?
Mother came from Poland.
What city?
She is from a large family. The Roosh family.
How do you spell that?
R-O-O-S-T-H.
Okay.
From Tyler.
And do you know what the city was in Poland where she came from, or either
Daddy
one of them?
was from Suwałki.
Okay.
And my mother was from Białystok.
Okay.
So Mother came over when she was like 16 years old and had a tutor to help her.
With English?
With English.
Now, did they both speak Yiddish when they got here?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And they spoke Polish when they didn't want the kids to know what they were talking about.
I see.
So, anyway, and then Mother had a sister, Mrs. Taylor. Everybody called her Mrs. Taylor, not Aunt Taylor. Or
what was
Aunt.
her first name? Hardly even
In
remember.
Yiddish, it was Branky.
Okay.
Now, I think translated that would be Bertha.
Yeah, okay.
But everybody called her Miss Taylor. She made pickles that she was famous for her gallon jugs of Miss Taylor's homemade pickles.
And where did she grow up? Also Tyler?
No, Miss Taylor, Mother's sister,
yes,
grew up in Poland.
Oh,
and
right.
came to Tyler.
Oh, okay.
The family came to Tyler. Now, why, I don't know. But the family name was Rouge, large family. And there were 7 brothers. And they all prospered and did well.
Did they all come to Tyler?
Yes.
Wow.
And I bring that up because here was a family not educated, not with any and engineers and architects.
Wow.
And in other words, the parents didn't have the opportunity, but every one of those kids
Wow.
came
Yeah.
very well educated.
Made sure that they got their education.
Right.
That's cool.
So it really was.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so someone came to Miss Taylor, mother's older sister, said, there's a young Jewish boy in a boarding house here. I want you to meet him.
Uh-huh.
I think it would be right. And
In Tyler.
in Tyler.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough. Now, this was already after World War I, because my father, who was doing all kinds of odd jobs to get along, heard if you volunteer for the Army, they give you 3 square meals a day, and it's not going to be a bed, and a place to sleep.
Uh-huh.
So he went and lied about his age, and he was really only, he was a few years too young, but he said he was older, and they took him. And then he said, and I'm a really good cook.
Yeah.
He figured if he could cook, he'd have plenty to eat. This was a hungry young man.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he was a cook in World War I.
Huh. Here in the States, or did he go to Europe?
No, he stayed in the States.
I see.
And then when he got out, then he began his, just another part of his
Yeah.
life.
Now, where was he stationed? Do you have any idea?
San Antonio.
Oh, okay. I forget what the name of the
Fort Sam Houston.
Fort Sam Houston.
Fort Sam Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, actually, he ended up really in Texas. He met people. You know, we didn't, you have to think back in the teens, we weren't such a mobile society.
Mm-hmm.
So his contacts were around Texas.
Sure.
And that's where he stayed.
Absolutely.
So they met Mother, then they got married, lived in Thailand.
Yeah. And raised you and your sister?
And 2 other sisters, 4 girls.
Okay. And where are you in the birth order?
I'm second.
Okay.
Fanny, myself, and 2 younger.
And what are the names of the younger ones?
Marilyn, Ruth.
Okay.
And both of them live in San Antonio.
Ah, okay.
They were still single and lived at home when the family moved to San Antonio. And that's where they were.
Now, your parents moved to San Antonio,
Yes.
is what you're saying. And when
Yes.
was that?
47.
Okay, so that was
A
right
year
after you
after
married.
I was married.
Uh-huh.
The family made that change.
Right. Okay. So the main people then that would be left in Tyler would be your mother's siblings,
Exactly.
kids and grandkids kind of thing. Okay.
Used to be kids grew up, they all went to college, couldn't wait to leave.
Mm-hmm.
From what I'm hearing all of a sudden, younger people are moving back to Tyler, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, let's see. So let's go back to you. When did you graduate from high school?
When I was 16,
And do we get to know what year that was?
oh sure, 43.
Okay. So what did you do after you graduated?
When I graduated from, I loved to study. I was a good student. First of all, there wasn't a lot of guys to date.
Yeah.
I had plenty of time.
Right.
And anyway, I loved to study, and I was very tied up. And I guess I haven't changed that much. I liked organization work. I was a joiner, and I was involved growing up in lots of things. My father, I can remember him now, he says, do you have to lock the building every
Right.
you get home, you know,
Oh,
because
this
there were
was in
meetings
high school.
in high school. There were meetings and things to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, and
What high school did you go to?
Tyler High.
Oh, okay. Was it the only one
At that time.
Okay.
Yes. And anyway, and then I moved to, then I went to college, went to the University of Colorado for the first year, and you have to realize times were different.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, you didn't, oh, I'll fly home for the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Fares were expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And my family couldn't really afford for me to, gee, I feel like I'll come home this weekend.
So when you left...
When I left, and I knew that I could come home Christmas vacation.
Uh-huh.
And I was 16,
wow.
middle child,
uh-huh.
homesick as could be.
At the University of Colorado?
At the University of
Boulder.
Colorado.
Well, you sure picked the prettiest place. Was it beautiful?
Beautiful. And
yeah.
you know, when I think back on it, it was really, if I hadn't been homesick, I would never have left to change school.
Uh-huh.
It was now I did.
How long were you there?
Half a year. When the
just
semester was over, I was ready to come home. And
Did they have any Jewish sororities or anything?
Oh, yes.
They
I
did.
was a DPI.
Uh-huh.
And as a matter of fact, ended up living in the house. Moved into the house right away.
Surrounded by all those
and they lived in Denver, and I would go home with them.
Uh-huh.
When I look back on it, and having raised 3 daughters, I said, you know, you really had such an ideal college life. I cannot understand.
Right, why it came back.
Why? So, anyway, you know, I have to interject one thing. I was a senior in high school back, I forgot something, when I was in high school, during the war.
Right.
4 years. And I always loved speaking, and so forth. We wrote like a speech, we called them an oration, on war bonds, on selling war bonds for a class or something. Anyway, it ended up where I got to travel selling at war bond rallies, selling war bonds, delivering this 10-minute oration.
Uh-huh.
And as it turned out, this oration was a letter from my grandmother in Poland, and it was her historical documentation before the Nazis moving into Poland, and as she ran with her silver candlesticks in one hand and with a few other possessions, just ahead of the Nazis, and the letters that we would get through until they were no more.
Right.
So anyway...
You still have those?
No. No. That would belong to actually, was my family.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't keep
Your mom had them.
Mother
yeah.
and Daddy.
Yeah.
Mother had them.
Right.
So, but I was so impressed with all this. And I wrote my own oration. And I ended up, and I would get on these little planes and fly all over Texas.
Wow.
And it was a
adventure.
wonderful experience.
Yeah.
It really was.
And who were you addressing with your talk?
They would have citywide, the Rotaries, the different civic organizations would have bond rallies to sell war bonds during World War II. That was part of my life.
Just wondering, was the fact that you were Jewish and the fact that the Nazis were persecuting Jews in particular, was that at all part of it?
Never part of it.
Never part of it.
I was just tied up with school.
Well, I'm thinking
with
even,
school.
yeah, and from their point of view even, that whether your audience or you, nothing.
No, they didn't tie it together.
Right.
That I knew of, anyway.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, it was, thinking back over it, sometimes I think back over some highlights.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that was really a highlight.
Right. I would think so. What an opportunity.
It really was.
Right. And to do good. I mean, to do something that made such a difference.
Right.
You know.
This was something women, you know, and I was all at the time of 14.
Oh, yeah.
15.
Absolutely.
And
a girl.
Very young.
Yeah.
Young girl. anyway, but to get back to college, so I finished that half a year, came back to Tyler.
Now that was 1944? Am I
44,
okay.
enrolled Tyler Junior College. And
did you like it?
Yes, I was so
it's a very
happy.
good school.
Good school.
Yes.
I was like I was comfortable. I was back in my home and stayed there. Had a year and a half to do. Graduated from there. And like I said, I was a strong student. This is what I liked. And then I went to the University of Texas.
I thought so.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I was ready already to go leave home, get away from home.
Right.
And so many of
So that was 46
friends,
or 45?
45.
Okay.
So many of my friends that I still have today.
Yeah.
Your
Right,
father
Jackie.
was right. Jackie.
Jackie Prager.
Jackie Prager.
Jackie Boudreau.
She was Jackie Boudreau.
Yeah.
No, Jackie LeSueur.
That's right, she was Jackie
Jackie
LeSueur.
and I were roommates in the sorority house together.
Yeah.
She was president of the sorority and I was vice president. But before that, when I first went down there, I lived in Miss B's boarding house, a Jewish boarding house on Rio Grande, and had a roommate who has stayed a lifelong friend.
What's her name?
Leah. She was Leah Setzer from Jacksonville, Florida, and her husband of 50 years is Milton Levitt. And when he first met her, she was going with somebody else. I said to her at the time, Milton is so nice. Leah, of the two, dropped the first.
Really?
And she ended up with Milton, and we laughed about it all the time. Good choice.
Right.
Anyway.
I guess it worked out.
It worked out beautifully. 6 children later.
In 50 years. Wow.
Anyway, and then so many, and I loved it at the University of Texas.
Yes. What sorority were you in?
Delta
Phi?
Phi
Okay,
Epsilon.
so.
And the summer before, am I rattling too long?
No.
Okay.
Summer
before, I was just about to become a senior, my senior year. And I had already been voted into Orange Jackets. And a lot of, service organizations on campus.
Yes. And anything else that sticks in your mind?
Yeah, I was a Phi, they called them Phi Theta Kappa, I think, from junior college. You were Phi Beta Kappa from senior colleges.
Right.
But I was a Phi, I think it's called a Phi Theta. I
Theta
got
Kappa?
the key, in the jewel box back there. Anyway, from my junior college, but anyway, I had a lot of things going at the University of Texas, and I met Marvin.
Down there?
No, he was working in Dallas, and my big sister in sorority lived in Dallas.
Who's
His
that?
sister, Ducky Yarrin, who became Ducky Fernberg.
This was his sister then?
His sister. I came to Dallas that summer to visit my sister who was living here, Fannie Phillips Leon, and I called Ducky and Marvin, and anyway, his father was recovering from a heart attack, and
what was his dad's name?
Jack Yarrin, and so I spoke to him a few minutes and said, have Ducky call me when she gets it. That night, Jack said to Marvin, I spoke to a friend of your sister's today who had the nicest voice on the telephone. You ought to take her out. I wouldn't be caught dead. He was all of 5 years older than I. I wouldn't be caught dead with my sister's friend.
Right.
And so he said, my father-in-law to be blew up, and he had just had the heart attack. And Marvin says, all right, don't get in a dander. If it will calm you down, I'll take her out. So he called, and we went to a movie, and he said on one condition, that Ducky and her fiance go along so he wouldn't have to spend the whole evening with the daughter. So they came and picked me up. We went to the movies. Then they lived in North Dallas, and my sister still lived in South Dallas. So instead of dropping me off in the downtown Majestic Theater, which is near South Dallas, he proceeded to take the other couple, his sister and them, to North Dallas first, and then to take me home to go get some, to visit and so forth. And at that time, he said, you know, I'm going to end up marrying you.
He did.
First date. And I looked at him and said, I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man on earth. He says, you'll see.
So he didn't behave himself on that first date very well.
Well, I knew what it took to get him to get out the door.
Right.
And I figured this conceited person.
Bad sign.
I was going to say, I didn't have to do this.
Yeah.
So anyway, as it turned out, so when I got back to school every night.
Tell me where you went on that first date. Do you remember?
To the Majestic Theater.
The Majestic Theater.
But I don't remember the name of the movie.
Okay. You're allowed.
But anyway, so then I stayed all week and saw him every night. And then on Friday, I went home back to Tyler. And by Friday night, he had a reservation at the Blackstone Hotel.
In Tyler.
In Tyler to drive in and spend the weekend, which he did every weekend.
Right.
Until I went back to school. And when I went down to school, he called every night. And anyway, so finally, when I came home for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur,
Your senior year?
my senior year, I quit school.
You did.
And I quit school, and we were married that November.
Did you ever go back and finish?
I certainly did. 30 years later.
Good for you.
I decided
At
that...
UT?
No, there was no UT here.
Well, right.
I decided that was an unfinished piece of business in my life.
Oh, you were so close.
But at that point, when you change schools,
Yeah.
you have to do the last 60 hours.
So where did you do them?
I'll tell you what I did. I went up, I waited till we were through educating all three of our girls. When they were all through, then I went back to school to Denton.
North Texas.
It
was North...
TWU.
TWU. Okay.
And there was a bus called Enterprises, something or other. And I'd set my little alarm for 5 o'clock, 5:30, get on the bus, and go to Denton every day. 3 days a week. I arranged all my classes. And in 2 years, I had my degree. I didn't know. I ended up doing my degree in early child development. Before that, I had done political science, which I loved government, and I really, a secret wish was to be an attorney. And in those days, women weren't attorneys.
Oh, it was illegal.
So
Did you know that?
I never got my dream.
Right.
But then I decided it was a little late to start being an attorney at that point of my life. So I decided to do this early child development, which I did. And as I graduated there, professor asked me would I be willing to stay on and start to work the child care facility there. And I said, let me let you know. And when I came home that day, Marvin said, you know, I've been thinking about something. How would you like to go into business together? Be a partner. And he had his real estate broker's license, but he was a salesman. He had changed careers. And he was ready to take his brokers, he said, let's open our own business. I said, you got me. That's it.
That was much preferable to
I wouldn't
going and
even
working
give it
in Benton.
I would not even
Right.
give it a thought.
When was that? What year was that when he got that started?
1973.
Uh-huh.
And with that, I immediately found out I could go to Richland and get some secretarial skills to run an office. I didn't know how to type, shorthand, anything. Then I found out there was real estate courses at Hillcrest at night. And I could get a salesman's license by going at night there.
Hillcrest High School you're talking about.
Right. So I did that, all sort of simultaneously.
Wow.
And
So you had a new career.
I started a new career, and I was a late bloomer and loved to work. So then, pretty soon, everything fell into place. We opened an office, and 3 years later, see, let me back up to something. Have a very deep religious feeling, and I feel whatever I do, God is my partner and guides my steps. Little did I know, this was 73, 74, by the time I got all this under the belt, that in 76, Marvin would have a severe heart attack. By that time, we already had our office going.
Yeah.
I had my training already. I could take over and run that office while he recuperated. And that was like a new chapter in my life. All our girls were married. No one was at home. And I began.
You became a real partner.
Real partner.
Yeah.
I would take the work from the day into a briefcase, take it to the hospital, go over it with him in the evening, repack the briefcase with notes, see him early in the morning, then go open the office, and but to get back to it, so I really got all my training, and by that time, I didn't. As soon as 1 year was up, I got my broker's license.
Sure. Yeah.
And loved the years we worked. And then when we retired,
when did you retire? What year?
87. Marvin said his health was really not good. And he said, I don't know how much time I have left, but I'm going to take some time to smell the flowers.
Smart man.
And so he said, and I know you love to work. I know you love the office, but I've had it. And I said, well, I love to work, but we built this thing together, so now we'll play together. And we packed it in. Then, there again, the hand of God intervenes. This was 87. In 85, Rabbi Zimmerman came to Dallas. And this man had such an influence on our lives, I can't tell you. And I'll always be grateful to him.
You're talking about Sheldon Zimmerman, the rabbi at Temple Emanuel.
Exactly.
Let's clarify.
We were twice, 3 times, no, more than that, 6 times a year temple goers. By the time you count the Yorksites with our parents and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that was when we went to Friday night services. We kept talking about going to Israel, but we never made it. 1 year we were booked, Marvin had a heart attack. Another year there was a Yom Kippur war and they canceled. So, back in 85, this dovetails with Zimmerman coming. He came in July. In the spring of 85, we came home for lunch. Our office was 5 minutes from our house. We would forward our calls to the house.
What was the name of your business?
The Yarrin Group.
Ah.
I named it. I named the baby. and I when we first started.
Great group.
Anyway, so then that day at lunch, the mail came, looked through it, and the choir was going to Israel on a trip, and said there are spaces available if anyone would like to go in the congregation. Marvin and I looked at each other, and I said, you know something, let's go. We've talked about going to Israel. Let's go for it.
This must have been Shelley's first trip with the congregation.
He didn't.
Oh,
he was
didn't
not
go.
here yet.
Oh, okay.
It was Simon and Ben organizing the trip.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a week tacked on Rosenthal.
Ben Rosenthal.
And there was
that?
Well, he's always been our tour director.
Oh, okay.
And he organized the trip,
Uh-huh.
and he and his wife Janie became good friends after that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, and then then they offered a trip, 1 week in Israel, 1 week in Italy. So it was to be a 2-week trip if you opted for both weeks. So we did. And Marvin loved to videotape. And whatever the choir did, all the concerts, he videotaped. And we were with the choir, and we loved that week. And we loved Italy. When we got home, the choir called me, someone from the choir, and said, Sarah, why don't you join the choir? You can carry a tune, you have a nice voice, and I think you'd really enjoy it. So you and Marvin seem to fit right in. So I said, let me let you know. I said, Marvin, what do you think of now this is a commitment. If I say I'll join, means every Tuesday night, and we'll go to services, but we don't have to go every week. Whatever they want to do, whatever you want to do. And he said, I think it'd be great. So I joined the choir. This was fall of '85. Rabbi Zimmerman came in July of '85. When Rabbi Zimmerman came, he started Hebrew Torah. And when he first came, the congregation said, Saturday is golf day. You'll never get anybody to your class. He said, okay, I have to try it anyway. And the rest is history. Marvin and I were in the original Hebrew Torah class.
With my dad, right?
With your dad. And you know how I sit? I used to pull another chair around, and Marvin and I sat on the end, right there. And whereas I read so much now, I'm the reader, Marvin was the thinker and the talker. He had more input in discussion, remember? He was the one who was very fast and thought very fast and very verbal. Anyway, then back in '87, when we retired, we had more time to really become involved at Temple, and it changed the direction of our lives. Marvin died in '96. Since we retired, the last 7, 8 years of his life were so full, enriched, and it just made such a difference. Of course, I loved it. And it made such a difference for me. It was like a second home. And when I was left alone, I loved it.
Did it feel like Temple felt like a real community support?
It's a real supportive community between choir family,
Are you still in the choir?
Oh, yes. Temple family. And then, of course, I haven't even touched on my own children.
Well, I know, because we skipped
a
big old chunk.
There's a big chunk of my children that I'm...
Okay, but
thank God.
Why don't we now tell me now about your involvement at Temple in those last 7, 8 years of Marvin's life.
All right, but before that, anything that my children were involved in, Marvin and I were involved in.
And did they go to Sunday school at Temple? Anyway?
Oh, yes. We would take them to South Dallas before the new Temple we for religious school,
Mm-hmm.
and then.
When was the new temple built? Do you remember what year that was?
Ooh.
It's probably easy to find, so
Yes.
it's not a big deal if you don't remember.
No, I really don't remember the year,
Okay.
and I should remember it.
Temple Manual?
Yeah,
1957.
Okay.
57.
It was right when I started preschool, I think.
Oh!
Yeah.
Anyway, and then once we were here, and through the years, we've been room mothers.
Mm-hmm.
Marvin used to love to conduct seders for the children.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to do when the children were confirmed, I'd
Mm-hmm.
be in charge of some of the
Yeah.
festivities and all this. And anything to do with the children
Mm-hmm.
was always priority.
Mm-hmm. So you worked with Ray Israel?
Always.
Very closely?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Uh-huh.
Ray Israel and
Anybody else you remember? Really working with the kids and stuff?
no, not really.
It was mainly him.
Really just Ray.
Yeah. Well, he was in charge for decades, of course.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then, anyway, and then once the children were grown, and of course Rabbi Klein was very close.
Uh-huh. Oh.
Now, during the years, I feel very badly. I never really got to know Rabbi Ola. We
Yeah.
were working. We
Uh-huh.
didn't, we were still 4, 5, 6 times a year temple goers.
Mhm.
Not,
Right.
and then after I joined the choir, whereas I would go to services, I would never miss choir practice. Pretty soon, every Friday night we're in temple.
Mm-hmm.
Now we never miss services.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's been.
Uh-huh.
My friends know not to invite us to a dinner party on Friday night.
Uh-huh.
We're not going to go.
Uh-huh.
If my children are having something and Friday night is involved with the children, yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's the priority.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, no.
Well, okay, so let me go back because I know
I'm
I've...
going to mess up your tapes. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
We get to
I want to
talking
hear
about-
so many details. I
It's
just
so
don't even know
nice
where to begin.
Reminisce.
Let's see. So when you first, let's go back to when you and Marvin got married. What year did you get married, did you say?
46.
46. Okay.
Ellen was born in December of 47.
That was your oldest daughter.
Oldest daughter.
Okay.
About 13 months later,
Okay.
the first one came.
All right.
Ellen. Holly was born 21 months later.
Okay.
Jackie was born 2.5 years later.
Okay, so
So
Ellen,
within 5 years,
you had all your kids.
all my kids.
You had 3 children. Have 3
Three
children. 3 daughters. And your first one was born in like 47 then. It must have been, right?
December of 47.
Okay. And then the next one was like 49.
49
Okay.
and 52.
Okay. So Jackie. I knew Jackie.
Right. And she knew
She
Karen
was-
Eves.
Oh, well,
Karen
Prager. And yeah, she was in my
Right.
confirmation class.
I bet so.
Okay. So we know that Sarah's youngest daughter was confirmed in 1968. Let's just put
Right.
that on the record.
Right.
All right. So, okay, I knew Jackie. Wow, I never made that connection. Okay, so where did you all move when you first got to Dallas? Where did you live?
Apartments were at a premium. You
Uh-huh.
couldn't find a place to live right after the war.
Right.
My Uncle Sam Roosh in Tyler
Uh-huh.
owned apartment buildings
In Dallas.
here in Dallas. And I knew he owned some furnished apartments off of Cole Avenue. And I called him
Mm-hmm.
and said, is there a prayer? And there were rent controls.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh.
we had a 1-bedroom furnished apartment for $47.50
Mm-hmm.
a month.
Off of Cole.
Off of
Was it
Cole.
on Cole?
Uh-huh, right off.
Hmm.
There was, Marvin loved Chinese food, and there was a little Chinese grocery, Jung's, nearby there.
Was this an ethnically diverse kind of neighborhood?
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
yeah?
Oh,
Like,
yes.
like who did you live around? People from, were there other Jewish families living around there at all?
Not that I knew.
Yeah.
Not that I knew,
Uh-huh.
you know. But we didn't stay there too long, because, of course, a few months later, I got pregnant.
Right.
And Marvin said, we really ought to get a house.
Uh-huh.
And you could buy a house with nothing down on the GI Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought our first house on Kenwell Street,
Mm-hmm. Which is where?
near Love Field, off of Mockingbird Lane,
Mm-hmm.
up in the near Lemon Avenue. I love the area. And we bought 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, nothing down, and moved in. So I really never got to know apartment neighbors.
Yeah.
But we did know our house neighbors. And at the time, Ducky and Bob bought a house 2 doors down.
Wow.
And at the time, Marvin's parents sold their house in University Park and bought behind us on Starling Circle.
Wow.
So all the yards.
Now, I know you told me, and if this is a repeat, just tell me, because we don't need to repeat it for the tape, but did you say that Marvin's family came to Dallas? Or they were in Tyler, weren't they?
No, they were in New York.
Oh, okay.
His father worked for a large company that transferred him to Dallas.
I see.
After they got here and loved Dallas so much, he severed ties with the big company and opened his own business.
I see.
And Marvin went in business with him.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Right.
So Marvin was actually in business with his own dad.
Right. And then as his dad became very ill, in those days they treated heart attacks. You lay in bed and wait to die. You don't even walk. You don't do anything. And this bear of a man who had never had a sick day went out like that at 47. And then so he laid there till 54. He was 54. So it was such a sad thing when you look back. Anyway, and so we lived on Starling Circle. I mean on Kenwell Street. There was a artist, a black man, Billy the Kid, who did Art Deco, who bought our house a few times after the house changed hands. He was written up on high profile, and I took the children by. The yard was covered with his Art Deco work. Looked like the biggest junk shop you ever saw in your neighborhood. My first house.
Oh. Really? He painted the house?
No, he didn't paint the house. He stuck everything in the front yard. I don't know what the inside looked like. Never rang the doorbell to find out. And anyway, we stayed there 3 years, and then we bought a house on Walnut Hill Lane that was a little larger house next to Preston Hollow School. Kids could walk to school. And anyway, we stayed there for 3.5 years. And then decided to move, and we moved to Preston Haven.
Which is?
It's right before, the last street before Preston Forest Shopping Center, which at that time there was no Preston Forest.
Oh.
There was no shopping center. And we bought a lot and built a house. And for what was going to take 2 or 3 months became 9 months. We rented a place in the apartments off Northwest Highway by Temple. A 2-bedroom apartment. Put bunk beds in the second bedroom for the 3 little girls.
And waited for this house to
finish.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it finally did.
And that was at a house near Preston Forest?
Yes.
And what was the name of that street?
Preston Haven.
Right, you said that.
And then, after the children all left, Marvin was dying to get out. I think his New York roots came through. I had never lived in an apartment, and he had always lived in an apartment.
Sure.
So he said, we have no children living at home now. Let's move to an apartment, a condominium. So we did, and with the understanding if I didn't like it, we would move back to a house. So we stayed in the condominium 6 years.
That's a long time.
And we then came to this house that we're in now.
So where was the condominium?
Down the street on Royal Lane.
Okay.
And decided, and as it turned out, we bought that condominium from the owner, and he had a new young bride, and they had taken 2 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartments and we made them into one.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
So it was really nice
Yeah.
size, everything. The only problem was I never could adjust to walking in the front door and smelling the bacon.
Mm.
Plus, assigned parking, and guests have no place to park.
Mm-hmm. And you've always been a very social person, right?
Right. And big family.
Uh-huh.
And when you have to tell people didn't have a place to park,
Yeah.
I was really not pleased.
Yeah.
Once you got inside the condominium, everything was fine.
Uh-huh.
But till you got there.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so here we are.
Really. It sounds like even though you didn't grow up in a kosher home, there were still things that you didn't eat. Like you didn't eat pork, and
Right.
were there other things you don't eat and didn't eat, and like
Well,
shellfish and or was it
growing
mainly
up,
pork?
we
Uh-huh.
didn't. But after I was married,
Uh-huh.
I did.
You did. You started
Because
eating
Marvin ate
everything.
everything.
I see.
Everything.
Uh-huh. So
But
when,
then, I'll tell you, we ate less of it
yeah.
the last few years.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But we still ate.
So I guess I'm wondering, where did your aversion to the smell of bacon come from?
It's just a smell.
Ah, interesting.
know.
Okay, so it wasn't anything
And
particularly religious.
No,
Oh,
it's
uh-huh.
a smell.
Uh-huh.